Here we are, Quest 3, Level 2, called Families Fractured. And this level is all about sisters. It begins, actually, with one of my favorite short stories on the planet. Alice Walker's short story, Everyday Use. It is in your Springboard book, so you can use the Springboard Digital to listen to it. There are also readings of it, various people of various quality reading it on the YouTubes, if you can find one that's not blocked by MPS, or listen to one on your phone or at home. This particular story, it is about two sisters who have very different worldviews. Now, it is narrated by their mother, and so she sort of reaches a point in the story where you've got one sister with this worldview, one sister with that worldview, and she has to kind of choose which worldview she is going to support more. And this is done through symbolic objects throughout the story, but in particular, quilts. If you don't know much about quilts, you have access to all world knowledge on whatever device it is that you're watching this video. You can take a Google and figure out what quilts are. Your next text, also from the Springboard book, is called Two Ways to Belong in America by a woman named Bharati Mukherjee. As you can tell by the name, not traditional white American. She was in fact born in India. Her sister Mira was also born in India. They both came to the United States for college, and being here has given the two of them, the two sisters, completely different perspectives on their home in India, their homes in the United States, the policies of the United States on immigration. Now, this particular essay is about 20 years old, so the discussion of immigration policies and all of that has nothing to do with the current events of 2018 and the immigration discussion that we are having now. And in fact, Bharati Mukherjee died in 2017. But there's still enough there that I think you can understand that you can sink your teeth into. You are, again, facing two sisters who have these very different cultural worldviews. And what's going to be trickier is that you're again going to look for a symbol within this text. Bharati Mukherjee, she's a writer, she's writing what she writes on purpose, and she includes a couple of different things that could be taken as symbolic objects for these sisters' particular differences in worldview. And then we leap firmly into the 21st century with a podcast made by a National Public Radio program called Planet Money. Podcast, if you're not familiar with that, it's like radio, but on your phone or on your device. You're going to listen to this podcast. This particular episode is part of a series that Planet Money did about making a t-shirt. They started with where is the cotton that we're going to use in our t-shirt, where is that grown? Where does that get processed? Where does it get turned into a shirt? Where does it land in the United States to be sold and distributed to Planet Money listeners? This is called The Sisters Who Made Our T-Shirt. So this particular episode features two sisters in a city in Bangladesh, which is a city in Asia, and hopefully the post-production team has put up a map of Bangladesh right there. And even though they're, again, not very far apart in age, there's a huge cultural divide between the older sister and the younger sister. And it is once again, I think, perfectly illustrated by a symbolic object. There's a lot more going on in this particular podcast than, here's one culture, here's another, and here's the symbol. Because it really is about the way our clothing is made, because you know, I'm hoping that this is not a spoiler, but the clothes that you are wearing were probably not made by a very well-paid person in a first world country who has, you know, health insurance and life insurance and a family supporting wage at their job. So there's a lot more to it than just that. All right, and then you have one more crash course video. This is the last crash course of the semester. It's another crash course sociology video. This one that kind of gets to the question of nature or nurture. So you have these families, these two sisters who grew up in the same household in three different instances. They obviously share genetics, they obviously share parentage, but they end up with completely different perspectives. Is that something that is because of nature and because of their genes and because of the parenting, or is this something that happens because of the way that they are raised, or something else that is happening to them? It's a fascinating question, the old nature versus nurture question about what kind of person are you? Is that entirely determined by your genetics? You know, like I am bald by nature, but I love myself. I deal with it by nurture. I come from a long line of very bald and handsome bullock men, and just don't make fun of me for it. And then finally, at the end of the level, I keep saying the word symbol. That's what you're going to do. You're going to kind of do an analysis of the texts, the podcast, the essay about by Bharati Mukherjee, and the short story by Alice Walker. You're going to kind of say, this is what the author was doing with the symbolic objects in these texts. So there's more information and more directions there for how to do it, but I want to take a look at the scoring rubric. Just like in level 1, there's RL2 and RI2, which are about analysis of literature, analysis of informational text. Are you doing a thoughtful examination of the symbolic objects from the texts in this level? There is also a brand new writing standard that we have not touched on previously, that is the analysis standard. To score advanced here, your writing at the end of the level is going to clearly recognize that the authors are choosing these symbolic objects in order to create meaning in the texts, right? When Alice Walker is writing everyday use, the title of the story comes from a sentence that one of the sisters says about the quilts. The quilts are central to the whole meaning of that story, and that is not an accident. And to score advanced, you're going to have to use the best relevant evidence from the texts. You're going to want to cite it correctly. We have talked previously about MLA citation, putting it in parentheses. There are links to refreshers about all of that in the level document. So as you're reading these the first time, you should be thinking about this question: how are the authors using these symbols? And you should be looking for really good evidence about those symbols. There's also one more standard. So media literacy, this is going to involve your answers to the questions about the podcast, The Sisters Who Made Our T-Shirt, as well as are you paying attention to the ideas and the specific details of that crash course sociology video. Again, you know, with these, the literature, the informational text, and this media literacy standard, those should be pretty easy for you to score very well on. And hopefully, if you're paying attention as you're reading these and you're giving some thought to putting together the pieces about the symbols in these texts, you can score advanced on the analysis standard as well. All right, good luck.